For as long as I can remember, if you did these two things, spend less than you earn and have 3 to 6 months of your expenses in emergency savings, you were going to be fine. However, prices have gone up. Gas prices alone are at their highest point in the last 4 years. The price of buying a home since 2019 is up 50%, while your income on average has only gone up 24%. How you are approaching your emergency savings, the baseline level that you need to operate in this economy, is wrong. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly why and how to address it. Let's go ahead and break it down. My name is Kevin. I'm a financial planner, and I can help you build confidence, clarity, and momentum in this here economy. You can go to buildingbread.com/callkev to book a one-on-one meeting for free. Let's start here. The issue with the 3 to 6 month recommendation that's been around for decades is this: anchoring. This has been a psychological bias that we all suffer from. I can tell you my own personal story here in a sec, but in either case, it is something that we all kind of fall into. In that, my first apartment was $900 when I graduated college. That was rent, and anything above that, because that's my anchor, right? My anchor is when I started, my perspective, that's it. Right, and anything above that is now expensive, okay? Now, because of that anchor, I may be thinking, hey, well, 9 times 6 is 54. Okay, so assuming that was all my expenses, clearly it wasn't. As long as I have roughly $6,000 in savings, I should be fine. Well, what did I say in just the last 2 minutes or so? The cost of buying a house has gone up 50% just since 2019. So $900 a month is near impossible in many parts of the country. That's not gonna cut it anymore. So if an emergency happens like it did to me last year, $6,000 isn't gonna cover 6 months of my rent or my mortgage anymore. It was never going to cover it because my anchor and what I thought has changed because prices have changed. And the mistake that I see so many people do is I am building my savings for what I used to do because my anchor was set 5, 10, or 15 years ago. I hit that mark and I left it alone. It's very similar, not exactly one-to-one, but very similar to Dave Ramsey's baby steps. Now, yes, his baby step is a starting point, hitting that first $1,000, and you are supposed to continue to save. I get it. I 100% get it. However, $1,000 doesn't really get you nearly as far as it did when he first unveiled that in the 80s or 90s. And that's a part of the issue. I would probably update that to, I don't know, 2,000 or 3,000 or whatever. Whatever the equivalent of that would be adjusted for inflation is what I would consider doing. But in either case, that is the thing here. You want to sit down and update and think, what are my expenses now versus what they were, and is my emergency savings still sufficient? Because even for me, I've had daycare expenses at one point in time, and the 3 to 6 months of my own expenses aren't what they used to be. When was the last time that you went through and saw, wait a minute, in the last 3 years, we've had inflation. Are my grocery bills the exact same? Are my electric bills the exact same? When was the last time that you adjusted to ensure that you have that? And if you don't, how long is your emergency savings actually going to last you? Because what you don't want to do is run into an emergency, lose your job like many people are. Facebook just announced they're going to do a layoff, and have to figure out what that number is going to be the hard way. Sitting in front of your computer trying to figure out how much longer that savings is going to last. Again, know that from experience. Now, what I've been recommending for well over a year now is extending that to 8 to 12 months. And I would say 18 months at the absolute maximum for several reasons. One, things are just generally costing more and the entire economy has changed, especially right now. If you're watching this in 2026, and this may be a trend for a very long time, for example, it's taking people way longer to find jobs than what it used to. It used to be anywhere between 60 to 90 days. Last time I checked, it is taking people closer to 9 months to a year to find a job. Again, that 3 to 6 months is not going to cut it. You will feel a whole lot better if you slowly work your way up to 8 months, to 12 months and say, look, I know things are bad. I don't enjoy being in this situation. However, I know I have 12 months of my expenses saved up. I know that I've updated what my expenses are and I can last for that long and things are going to be okay. As I search for a job, if I need to apply for unemployment, if I need to reduce some of my expenses to make sure that my savings is going to last long enough for those things to work out for me. What worked in the past is not going to work anymore because you can't just take your application and walk into a spot and get a job very quickly anymore. That's not the world that we live in. Those aren't the jobs that we have typically, and especially those aren't the jobs that are going to pay the bills because again, rent ain't $900 anymore. Now, if that were the case, then this would change everything. But now, those type of jobs don't pay for the mortgages that we have. They don't pay for the rent that we have. That'll barely keep the lights on, and I mean that quite literally. Now, where should you save this money? I'm gonna go ahead and tell you this right now. No, it should not be in your IRA, your individual retirement account, and it should not be in a Roth IRA either. We can get into a conversation about IRAs. I have an entire video about IRAs and the difference between that and a savings account, but I'll tell you right now, your emergency savings account should be in a savings account, preferably a high yield savings account. I'll tell you exactly why here in a sec, but I have done a separate video on some of the best savings accounts, and that video is right here. Now, separate from that, the reason why you want to have your money in a savings account and a separate one from your checking is because of this. One, you want easy access to it. I do not want to go and call my investing account, aka Fidelity or Charles Schwab or whomever, and then say, hey, I need to sell a stock. You don't want to have to do that. You don't want to have an extra transfer and wait an extra 2 days or whatever it is to pull that money over and go through that entire process. I do not want to commingle, aka mix funds between what I am supposed to have to grow for me versus what I have to protect me and build my foundation. It is far too confusing and there are far too many risks for that. Don't do it. Your individual retirement accounts, IRAs, are built for investing. Leave them for what they are there for, okay? And have your savings to do what it is supposed to do, which is to save. Have them totally separate. Now, I prefer to have my things at different banks. That's just me. You do what you want to do. If you want to have everything at, a specific bank, I'm not going to mention a specific bank because they don't pay me. They don't pay me for Fidelity or Charles Schwab either, but most of us know them. But it is what it is. In either case, the rates that they do pay will change, depends on what the Federal Reserve does. I've done explaining videos on that. I can add all those links in the comment section below. Speaking of comment sections below, you can click the link in the comment section to book a one-on-one call with me, buildingbread.com/callkev. Now, I mentioned earlier about the 18 months being the absolute max. Why would I not go beyond that? Why would I want to save 2 years or 3 years of my maximum expenses? That is because there is a trade-off. Savings account, depending on, again, what year it is and what rates are paying, you're going to be capped at a certain percentage. I mean, 3-4% at the absolute most is at least what I've seen primarily in my lifetime. Now, back in the day, rates were pretty high, right? But, it is what it is. In either case, 3, maybe 4%. And again, depending on what rates are, those can get very difficult to find. There was one point, I would say 2008-ish, when I was really kind of getting into it. I was out of high school, starting to get my first job and all type of stuff. 2% was a lot. Okay, that's when I was coming into things, even working at a bank. 2% used to be a lot. In either case, 2%, 3%, 4%, that's really not going to make you rich. Your savings account also is not supposed to make you rich. However, we're talking about your expenses, right? So if you need $30, $40, $50, $60,000 to pay the bills for an entire year, you're talking a year and a half, I don't want that money just sitting there not growing in what could have been the stock market. And we're talking 2 years of expenses. So now if we're talking $60,000, we're talking $120,000. That's not growing for you. We call this opportunity cost of what you have and what you could have done elsewhere if rates were to fall, let's say rates are at 3% and inflation is also at 3%, your money isn't growing at all. Now again, because the money is in savings, it's not supposed to grow per se. It is supposed to be a safety net. However, I want you to grow. I want you to also be wealthy. So it is a balance here. But again, the goal here is safety. So you don't want to oversave. You don't want to have 2 years, 3 years. Again, my benchmark, 8 to 12. 18 months is because you are overly cautious and you going overboard for some reason. That's just paranoia. But I absolutely would not recommend going over that 18 months mark, because if you are investing that money, the stock market has averaged, just an average, 7%. That's after inflation. And that wealth is supposed to also build your safety net and build more stability for you. So hopefully you kind of get a balance there. Now that is just your savings account. That is the baseline. The second level is building your investment portfolio. But exactly how are you supposed to do that in chaotic times like this? If you want to know exactly how that works, you want to check out these videos right here.